May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. This man sitting outside this pool, the gospel implies he's been there for 38 years, sick. This is one of those stories that kind of makes us crazy. We had on our reflection group on Tuesday. The initial reactions were one of just frustration. It's like, they always say different. There's all these different versions of our own personal hell that we all have, and surely one of us, it would be sitting outside this pool, and for some reason or another, for dozens of years, not being able to simply get up and go into the pool, knowing that the pool could cure you. And immediately the problem with my brain initially, I'm thinking, well, why couldn't he have gone at like 3 a.m. or something? I mean, surely there's not enough people there at 3 a.m. He could have pulled it off. Or why didn't he ask somebody? Or why didn't he start yelling and screaming and freaking out after like 4 hours, right? It seems like one of those crazy stories. And yet, I was listening to this documentary on depression. And the very first image they used was, they said, imagine you're lying in a dark room and you're racked with incredible pain and suffering. And across the room, there is a glass with something that looks like water. And you know that if you go across the room and drink from that glass, all of your pain and all of your illness will be cured. And you cannot get up. That was their description of what depression is like. And it really blew me away to then read this gospel and to see how powerful the similarities of those two images. Something else that might frustrate us in our gut watching, or sort of watching this man through this story is our lives are often filled with people who are wrestling with challenges and problems that we've solved. And it's frustrating to watch them not do that simple thing that we've done, to get up from that mat and go over to the pool. My own personal little thing is computers. I like computers. They're my friends. I have one here right now, recording this sermon. And it makes me crazy when I go over to one of my family members' house, and there's their computer filled with viruses, and everything's out of date, and nothing. And I'm thinking, how hard is it to just, it just takes you 2 seconds to just fix, it makes me crazy. I'm like, look, you just click this button. I don't know why you won't click. Just click OK. Just click OK. And yet, for a lot of these people that I'm visiting, computers are scary and frightening, and for whatever reason or another, they won't get off the mat and go across the room. It makes you crazy. And you can go down a list, right? And I know that some of you are going to be, for my brother, it's cars. He has no idea why I have junk in my car. It takes you 2 seconds. I don't know why you don't just empty the junk out of your car. It's just some paper. It takes you 3 seconds, and now you have a nice, clean car. Maybe take it to the vacuum. No problem. What's your problem? Why can't you keep your house clean? It takes 2 seconds. Just put away. Why is the laundry on the floor, right? It takes 2 seconds. Why aren't your finances in order? Why haven't you paid your taxes this year? It's so easy. Just get all the papers together. You go down, they pretty much do it themselves. It's no big deal, right? You can just go. And as I'm saying these things, you know of people that you're imagining in your head, why don't they get their lives together? It takes 2 seconds. And at the same time, I might have pushed a button, and you're like, whoa, hold on. How does he know that how does he know that that's one of my problems? That's none of his business. Right? And it starts out like that. And of course, we also know that these crises can spiral out of control. And suddenly bad habits can slowly, that can be comforting, can become addiction. Messes can become hoarding. And that's happened. I've had some experience in parish ministry with papers piling up for 30 years. And that can get out of control, and it can become monstrous and terrifying. Our finances can be ignored until we're in real trouble. Relationships can be ignored until those are in real trouble. And before we know it, we have been putting that thing off, that little thing. You just have to get up. You just have to get up off the mat, walk across the room. We've been putting it off for 10 years, 20 years, until eventually it's 38 years. And we haven't dealt with that thing. And it's become not only debilitating, it's become who we are. It's how we see the world. It's how we define our relationships with everyone around us. And it becomes almost unimaginable for us to get up off that mat and walk across the room, even if intellectually we know that we can be healed. For a lot of us, when we have been stuck for 38 years, figuratively, it seems it's only God that can get us to stand up and get off the mat. That's what the story is. This man is waiting for God. We all know that God's timing is awful. And we can spend a long time waiting. But God eventually arrives. The classic moment that's in popular culture is the idea of hitting rock bottom. That you wait and you wait and you wait until all of the relationships that you had built are gone. All of the distractions that you had constructed no longer work. And suddenly you're alone with God and with death as your two companions. And in that moment, God asks you to get up. And sometimes we get up, and sometimes we do not. And if you're in this room right now, you may have had to get up from God's urging at some point in your life. And you may have been on that mat for a while before God encountered you. But there are many other times when the people in this room, the church, are called to go to those pools on God's behalf. We have actually built a lot of pools, as not just as a church, but as a society. This is really where our civic duty kind of reaches its end, right? There's a lot of resources we have in Canada for people who are suffering, right? We've constructed a lot of pools, and it's fantastic, right? There's so many resources in terms of counseling, in terms of facilities, in terms of people to talk to. But where we reach our limit as a society, as a nation, is a lot of us think, well, we've built all these pools. They're all right there. Everybody knows that they're there. Why can't they just get up off their mat and go into the pool? It's so easy. What's the problem? And this is often where we step in as Christians because we know, because many of us have been on that mat or have been holding hands with someone who is. It is rarely that simple. We know that we can be sitting on there for 10 years, 20 years. And it is often our call as Christians not to build pools, as some of us have this skill. In a lot of ways, our church is a kind of pool. But we're called to be with those who wait for God. And we are called to wait with them. And it can be grief-filled and challenging and frustrating. I was listening to a doctor that worked at a heroin clinic, and he was saying that 95% of the people in this heroin clinic in Vancouver, 95% will die. He said it's a palliative clinic. 5% will come out of here alive, having beaten their addiction. They're all waiting by that pool. 5% get in. And the rest of the time, there are people there to hold their hands and wait with them for God. And indeed, many times, God comes through the resurrection. We have all been in hospitals with those who we love, where there's nothing more that can be done. And we are called to wait. To wait for God. To take them by the hand, get them to stand up, and go into the pool. It's scary for most people. People love to build pools. And the reality is, as Christians, there are not a lot of people that have the patience, that have the grace, that have the gifts to wait. There are also those of us in this room who have waited with someone waiting for God, and in this lifetime, they've stood up on their own with God, and their life was transformed. And we are transformed with them as we see Christ in perhaps some of the most powerful ways we can encounter God. We see Christ enter into our midst and transform a life forever. In the gospel story, he didn't even have to get in the pool. It was just the act of standing up with God that transformed this man's life forever. And some of us are given the gift of witnessing that. And it is profound and holy and sacred. But most of the time, we're waiting. We're waiting for God. And we're with those who are waiting too. And it is a blessing. And it is a vocation.